ever made a mistake so terrible that you felt there was no turning back? A mistake that gnawed at your soul until you felt entirely hollow inside. This is the story of Mark, a man who crossed that line and the impossible miracle that pulled him back from the edge of the abyss. It was a Tuesday night in Las Vegas, but inside the Golden Chip pawn shop, day and night didn't exist. The air smelled of stale cigarette smoke and desperation. Mark stood at the counter, his hands trembling uncontrollably. In his palm, he held the only thing that still mattered in his life, a heavy, solid gold rosary. It wasn't just jewelry. It was an artifact of love, worn smooth by the fingers of his mother, Martha, over 40 years of prayer. The pawnbroker, a man with greasy hair and eyes that had seen too much misery, looked at the rosary with indifference. He waited, scratched it against the stone, and grunted. 800. That's the best I can do. The gold is old. Mark felt bile rise in his throat. $800? That rosary was worth thousands in gold alone and priceless in sentiment. It was the rosary his mother had held while she underwent chemotherapy. It was the rosary she had pressed into his hands on her deathbed just 6 months ago, whispering, "Mark, promise me you'll keep this. It's your anchor. As long as you have this, you're never alone." "It's worth more," Mark stammered, his voice cracking. "Please, it was my mother's." The pawnbroker didn't even look up. "I'm not buying the story, kid. I'm buying the metal. Take it or leave it." Mark looked at the door. He could walk away. He could go home, place the rosary back in its velvet box, and try to find another way to pay his debts. But the addiction was a screaming monster in his head. The poker tables were calling him. He just needed one win, one big hand to win back the $20,000 he had lost in the last month. Just one win, and he would buy the rosary back immediately. That was the lie he told himself. "Deal," Mark whispered. He took the cash. As he walked out of that shop, leaving his mother's soul behind the bulletproof glass, a cold wind hit him. It didn't feel like freedom. It felt like he had just sold his own salvation. 3 hours later, Mark was sitting at a high-stakes poker table in a casino off the Strip. The initial rush of adrenaline had faded, replaced by a cold, suffocating dread. The $800 had turned into $2,000, then $3,000. For a moment, he thought he had done it. He thought he could fix everything. But greed is a cruel master. He didn't leave. He stayed. And then the tide turned. In a matter of 45 minutes, Mark lost everything. Every single chip. He watched the dealer rake away the last of his pile with a mechanical indifference that shattered him. He sat frozen in his chair, the noise of the slot machines ringing in his ears like mocking laughter. He had nothing left. No money for rent, no car. He had sold that last week. And now, no rosary. The final link to his mother, the physical proof of her love and faith, was gone. He had traded it for a few hours of dopamine and a lifetime of regret. He stumbled out of the casino into the neon-lit alleyway. The desert heat was oppressive, but Mark was shivering. He slumped against a dumpster, sliding down until he hit the gritty pavement. He buried his face in his hands and wept, not the soft crying of sadness, but the guttural, ugly sobbing of a man who has completely destroyed himself. "I'm sorry, Mom," he choked out, his voice lost in the noise of the city. "I'm so sorry. I'm lost. I'm completely lost." Thoughts of ending it all began to creep into his mind. Why go on? Who would miss him? He was a failure, a thief of his own family's legacy. He closed his eyes, wishing he could just fade into the asphalt.
It is a heavy burden to carry alone, isn't it? The voice was soft, melodic, and carried a strange authority that cut through the chaos of Mark's mind. He looked up, wiping his swollen eyes. Standing at the entrance of the alley, bathed in the flickering light of a street lamp, was a woman. She didn't look like the typical Las Vegas crowd. She wasn't wearing flashy clothes or clutching a cocktail. She was dressed simply, in a long, modest dress of a deep, iridescent blue. A white shawl covered her head, framing a face that was neither young nor old, but timelessly beautiful. Mark tried to stand, but his legs were too weak. I don't have any money," he stammered, assuming she was asking for help. "I lost it all." The woman stepped closer. She didn't walk. She seemed to glide over the dirty ground. As she approached, the smell of the dumpster, garbage, stale beer, and urine vanished. It was replaced by a scent so powerful and sweet that made Mark dizzy. It was the smell of fresh roses, hundreds of them. "I did not come for your money, Mark," she said. Her eyes were dark and full of a compassion that Mark felt he didn't deserve. She knew his name. "How do you know who I am?" Mark whispered. She said, "I know many things. I know that you are tired. I know that you feel you have thrown away the most precious thing you possessed. Not the gold, Mark, the promise." Mark lowered his head, shame burning his face. "I sold it. I sold her rosary. I'm going to hell." The woman reached out and took his hand. Her touch was warm, comforting, like a mother's touch on a feverish forehead. Hell is a place where hope cannot enter, but you are still here, and as long as you are here, there is a way back. She reached into the folds of her blue shawl and pulled out a small object wrapped in a white handkerchief. She pressed it into Mark's palm and closed his fingers over it. "Take this. Your mother wept many tears over this. Do not let go of it again. Go home, Mark, and never return to this life."
Before Mark could ask another question, he blinked, his vision blurring with fresh tears. When he wiped them away and looked up, the alley was empty. The woman was gone. There were no footsteps, no sound of a car driving away, just silence and that lingering, overpowering scent of roses. Mark looked down at his hand. He slowly peeled back the corners of the white handkerchief. His heart stopped. Lying in his palm was the golden rosary. He gasped, nearly dropping it. It was impossible. He knew every scratch on the beads, every dent on the crucifix. He turned it over. There, on the back of the cross, were the tiny initials engraved by his father. M.T. To my Martha. It was the exact same rosary. "No," Mark whispered, his mind racing. "No, this can't be. I sold it. I watched him put it in the safe." Panic and confusion mixed with a sudden, overwhelming surge of adrenaline. He scrambled to his feet and ran. He ran back towards the pawn shop, his lungs burning, clutching the rosary so tight the gold bit into his skin. He burst through the doors of the Golden Chip, startling the pawnbroker who was counting cash behind the counter. It was the same man, the same greasy hair. "You!" Mark shouted, slamming the rosary onto the counter. "How did you do it?" The pawnbroker jumped back, reaching for the alarm button. "Hey, calm down. What are you talking about?" "This," Mark pointed at the rosary. "How did I get this back? Did you give it to a woman? A woman in blue?" The pawnbroker looked at the rosary, his eyes widening in confusion. He looked at Mark, then back at the rosary. What are you playing at, kid? You sold me that 3 hours ago. I locked it up." "I didn't buy it back," he yelled. "A woman gave it to me outside. She said she knew me." The pawnbroker frowned. "Nobody has been in here since you left. It's been a slow night. That thing is in my floor safe. I have the only key." "Open it," Mark challenged, his voice trembling. "If that's real, open the safe." The pawnbroker, annoyed, but also visibly unsettled by Mark's intensity, grabbed his keys. "Fine, then you get out of my shop. You're crazy." He knelt down, pulled back the rug, and unlocked the heavy steel floor safe. He spun the dial, heard the click, and heaved the heavy door open. He reached in, confident, groping for the velvet pouch where he had placed the gold. His hand froze. The pawnbroker's face went pale. He ripped the bag out of the safe and turned it upside down. "Nothing fell out," he said, whispered. It's empty. I put it there. I swear on my life, I put it there. The camera saw me put it there." Mark looked at the golden rosary on the counter, then at the empty bag. He picked up the rosary, and as he held it, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. The gold was warm, not room temperature, but warm like human skin, and faintly, emanating from the metal itself, was the smell of roses.
Mark didn't ask for his money back. He didn't say another word to the terrified pawnbroker. He simply took the rosary, walked out of the shop, and kept walking. He walked for miles until he reached the steps of St. Mary's Cathedral. It was closed for the night, but he knelt on the concrete steps, clutching the miracle to his chest. For the first time in years, the noise in his head stopped. The urge to gamble was gone, replaced by a profound, shaking awe. He realized who the woman was. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a mother answering the prayers of another mother. Martha had prayed for him every day of her life, and her prayers had transcended death. Mark stayed there until sunrise. When the priest opened the doors for morning mass, he found a man kneeling on the steps, looking exhausted but peaceful, holding a golden rosary as if it were a lifeline to heaven. Mark's life didn't become perfect overnight. He had to face his debts. He had to go to meetings to treat his addiction. He had to work 2 jobs to rebuild what he had destroyed. But he never gambled again, not once. He kept the rosary in his pocket every single day. Whenever the urge to walk into a casino struck him, he would touch the beads and the scent of roses would return, faint but undeniable, reminding him that he was watched, that he was loved, and that he had been given a second chance that he could not waste.
Mark didn't ask for his money back. He didn't say another word to the terrified pawnbroker. He simply took the rosary, walked out of the shop, and kept walking. He walked for miles until he reached the steps of St. Mary's Cathedral. It was closed for the night, but he knelt on the concrete steps, clutching the miracle to his chest. For the first time in years, the noise in his head stopped. The urge to gamble was gone, replaced by a profound, shaking awe. He realized who the woman was. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a mother answering the prayers of another mother. Martha had prayed for him every day of her life, and her prayers had transcended death. Mark stayed there until sunrise. When the priest opened the doors for morning mass, he found a man kneeling on the steps, looking exhausted but peaceful, holding a golden rosary as if it were a lifeline to heaven. Mark's life didn't become perfect overnight. He had to face his debts. He had to go to meetings to treat his addiction. He had to work 2 jobs to rebuild what he had destroyed. But he never gambled a den. Not once. He kept the rosary in his pocket every single day. Whenever the urge to walk into a casino struck him, he would touch the beads and the scent of roses would return, faint but undeniable, reminding him that he was watched, that he was loved, and that he had been given a second chance that he could not waste.